The story behind this painting has become almost as famous as the painting itself. To represent the scene of Ophelia floating in the water, John Everett Millais asked his model, Elizabeth Siddal, to pose inside a bathtub filled with water, dressed in the same attire that appears in the artwork. The problem was that it was winter. To prevent the water from being too cold, the painter placed oil lamps beneath the tub, but they only managed to warm it slightly. Siddal ended up catching a severe cold and developed pneumonia that nearly cost her life. Her father, furious about the situation, threatened to sue Millais and demand £50 in damages. In the end, the artist covered the medical expenses and the model eventually recovered. This story shows just how determined Millais was to achieve the utmost accuracy in his work. The painting shows a young noblewoman lying in a stream, surrounded by waterflowers and other plants filled with symbolism that we will explore later. The young woman depicted is Ophelia, the ill-fated character from William Shakespeare's Hamlet. Her tragic end comes after she loses her mind upon discovering that her father, Polonius, has been killed by the man she loves, Hamlet. What strikes us first about this work is how Millais managed to give visual form to a literary episode with such imagination and realism. Ophelia's face, motionless and serene, reflects that mixture of resignation and paralysis in the face of destiny. Her embroidered dress spreads out in the water, which seems to hold her for a moment before slowly carrying her downstream. The feeling is unsettling. As Ophelia sinks, you can almost imagine the current flowing over her body. One very significant detail lies in the position of her hands. They are raised and open, reminiscent of the prayerful posture of early Christianity. This gesture, common in catacombs and sarcophagi, symbolized the openness of the soul to divine will and was used in depictions of saints interceding for the dead. In this way, Millais may have intended to show that Ophelia, in her final moments, surrenders in submission to an inevitable fate. Ophelia's death takes place in Act IV of Hamlet. Interestingly, it is not a scene that Shakespeare shows directly on stage. Instead, it is Queen Gertrude who recounts the event in verses filled with poetry. According to her, Ophelia had been gathering flowers, crowflowers, nettles, daisies, and long purples when she decided to climb the branches of a willow tree that grew over a brook. Suddenly, a branch broke and the young woman fell into the water along with her garlands. Although it all began as an accident, it is believed that the grief consuming Ophelia kept her from fighting for her life, and the weight of her dress, once soaked, eventually dragged her to the bottom of the stream. Millais's painting places us right at that moment. Ophelia appears with her lips slightly parted as if singing fragments of ancient melodies while she surrenders without resistance to the water that slowly carries her to her end. Another fascinating aspect of the work is the abundance of details that bring it to life. Just imagine a walk through the English countryside at the end of spring. The same variety of flowers and plants found there is what Millais incorporated into his canvas, giving the scene an unusual intensity. The painter began working on the landscape in the summer of 1851. After a meticulous search, he chose a corner of the Hogsmill River in Surrey that most faithfully reproduced Shakespeare's description, a setting where wildflowers grew in abundance and a broken branch hung over the water. In a letter to his friend Mrs. Combe, he confessed how exhausting the task was under the sun. I sit tailor fashion under an umbrella, throwing a shadow scarcely larger than a halfpenny for 11 hours, with a child's mug within reach to satisfy my thirst from the running stream beside me. The work is a balance between realism and symbolism. Every flower surrounding Ophelia carries meaning. The red poppy near her hand evokes eternal sleep and death. The daisies express innocence, while the weeping willow bending over the water reflects lost love. In the upper left corner, there is also a detail that can easily go unnoticed, a robin perched on a branch. This bird, common in British gardens, holds a special place in folklore. Considered friendly and familiar, it is also surrounded by superstitions. It was said that harming a robin brought bad luck and certain death. Its presence, therefore, reinforces the ominous tone that permeates the scene. The background of the painting was completed in Surrey, but the work with the model resumed in London during the following winter. There, Elizabeth Siddal posed wearing an old silver dress Millais had bought for £4 in a second-hand shop. It was then that the famous bathtub episode occurred. The model remained for hours in icy water, fell seriously ill, and nearly lost her life. Millais' obsession with precision in every detail led him to risk everything, even the health of the woman who embodied Ophelia. Although we have already spoken about him on the channel, Millais was part of the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood, a group of Victorian painters who sought direct inspiration from nature. Their purpose was to move away from artifice and exaggeration and to depict the world with the greatest possible honesty. They believed that in the Italian artists of the 15th century lay the purity and sincerity that painting of their own time lacked. The Brotherhood knew these works through engravings, yet they became convinced that such frankness needed to be revived. John Ruskin, the great art critic and defender of the movement, expressed it clearly. The function of the artist in the world is to be a creature who sees and feels. With that principle in mind, Millais' obsession with finding the perfect corner of the Hogsmill River and reproducing it with such painstaking detail becomes easier to understand. More than a whim, it was an attempt to remain faithful to the Pre-Raphaelite spirit, to observe, to feel, and to transfer nature onto the canvas without filters. The result is paradoxical. Although the painting portrays Ophelia's death, the canvas overflows with vitality. The vegetation, the flowers, the flowing water, everything seems to vibrate with energy. Millais transformed a tragic scene from Shakespeare into a poetic vision where the heroine's pain is wrapped in the abundance of nature. The canvas is filled with organic life precisely at the moment when Ophelia's own life is extinguished. That contradiction, perhaps, is what makes this work so powerful. And now I want to leave you with a question. Do you think it is morally acceptable for an artist to put their model in a dangerous situation in order to capture realism? Or do you believe it is better to work from imagination? We know this case was an accident and that Millais did not expect his model to fall ill, but if she had lost her life because of it, how would this painting be considered today? I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments. And on another note, if you'd like to have this painting in your home, it is now available on our website. In our catalogue, you'll find more than 700 historical artworks to choose from, so you can collect your favorite and hang it in your home. The video you're watching is just one example of how you can turn your house into your own museum and decorate it with a true work of art. Worldwide shipping is free, and by purchasing, you'll also be helping me continue creating videos like this one. Thank you so much for staying until the end, and I'll see you in the next video.